is August 21st, and it's a Friday. A spectacular day for Apple. You're going to see that in a little bit in the account. And also, what I want to talk about is emerging markets, basically the rest of the world versus the USA when it comes to potential investments, market capitalizations, and one little discovery I found really curious. Okay, so, but first, we're going into the account. So I'm sitting at 122,800, which is pretty impressive. 4,600 plus dollars of valuation gained, basically from Apple. I mean, this thing is just being ridiculous. You're gonna see it right here. Almost $2,000 from the shares themselves and 2,500 from the option, which I still haven't sold. I'm still holding on to that, and I'm probably gonna hold on to it till expiration. But we'll see. I mean, this thing is just nuts. It's over $2 trillion valuation right now, and it's getting pretty crazy. Here's what the week looks like. Basically, yesterday gained a little bit, and then today was a huge gain. The 1 month chart is about 10%, 3 month 46%, 1 year, year over year 50%. This is the old time chart if you haven't seen it. There you go. Let's compare that to the S&P, because I always like to do that. How about we take the week, and then we're going to use SPY here for the ETF, and that's up only 0.5%. For the month is 4.27 compared to 4.8, which is mostly just Apple, and then 10.8 for the month. So considerably higher than the S&P 500, which I'm very happy about. As always, you can run through these. You can follow along, and you can pause your video player at any moment if you want to see the exact positions of my account. So, of course, this will be the symbol that's left. I had about 5 options expiring this week. Symbol, price, strike price, whether it's a put or a call, and then the date of expiration, how many contracts I have, and whether they're a sell or a buy. So from that you can gather all relevant information here, and you can see most of the options are doing well because many of the underlying assets or equities actually went down in value. So that's why there's a lot of pluses on there. And then there's the big one, Apple, which is the only buy out of all these. Making a big play on Apple, that's for sure. Main is down, realty income about flat. Energy fuel made some gains. Chemicals down, but I have actually 12 calls sold against all these 1,200 shares. DEM, which probably going to mention in a little bit. Then ET is kind of flat. Visa's actually been doing really well for my account, and I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be buying Shell oil. That's what this means. That's why it's 0 shares here, because I'm going to be buying over the weekend because I let a put expire, and I'm going to be buying 100 shares through that put. If you want to see the account tab, this is what it looks like right now. Of course, I have a lot of options that are not counted into this, so it's a really kind of an unfair breakdown, but you can still figure it out. This is the Apple position, Chemical, realty income, which I'm trying to accumulate, energy fuels, DEM, and Visa. So Visa is actually my top 5. It's my 5th highest total return position, and I only have 15 shares in it, so it's doing pretty good. Now this is not all time. Obviously, there's a lot of positions being sold and bought all the time in this account, and this is not very representative of all-time gains at all, including the Apple possession. There's periods where I've sold all of Apple, but anyway, that's the account tab here, and this is it. Pretty massive day. I mean, not every day does your account go up $4,600, so I'm pretty happy about that, even if I don't look it. And what I want to talk about today is the discrepancy in market capitalizations between all the different regions in the world, especially the U.S. versus other parts of the world, and how I think that speaks bullish for the stocks and companies around the world. Now, I will say this with a caveat, and I do think the United States is probably the one country that is set to prosper the most out of anything that the economy throws at the world, because of kind of the rules and the culture. Mainly, it's the culture that's surrounded in the U.S. Like I've traveled around a lot around the world, and I can tell you that the culture is just not set up for business in many other places in the world. Like it's very if you think it's tough to do business in America, it's tough to do business anywhere else. It's tougher for most places in the world. Okay, there's a few tiny exceptions, little countries, things like that. Like maybe I haven't been there, Singapore, or maybe one more that I'll talk about in a little bit. But for the most part, it's very difficult, and I think that's why it's very hard to get capital in there. And you need rule of law and stable structure, and the U.S. has been doing the capitalism thing for a very long time, and they're very much ahead of the game when it comes to like what rules work best, and what we have to respect, and all that other cultural structure that comes with the capitalism. So I can tell you other countries are not like that. I mean, their minds are different. The culture is different. They don't champion entrepreneurship at all, and it's very difficult to do business there. So with the risk of repeating myself for a third time, let's go into the maps here. And this is the world map. So let's go through the everything together. And let's go to 1 day performance. You can see how enormous of a jump Apple had today relative to everything else, which was down. Even Microsoft was down. Alibaba was up 3%. We're going to talk about Alibaba in a little bit. What I want you to notice about Alibaba right now is how it's about half of the size of Amazon. Let me see if you can see it. Oh, you can't. Well, there you go. Maybe I should switch that a little earlier, huh? So you can see that Apple had a huge gain. By the way, this is FinViz, FINVIZ. If you want to look at this map yourself, you can zoom it in, you can zoom it out. It's pretty neat. So what I want you to notice here, if you would, is the size of Apple's gain and the size of Alibaba, and then how it occupies roughly half of Amazon, okay? So I want you to keep that in mind. And this is, of course, the 1 day. This is the 1 week performance, and you can really see the discrepancy between like the big tech plays and online stores, and then the banks and oil and all this other financial stuff. And I already talked about that in other episodes, so I'm not going to repeat myself too much here, but I'm definitely looking at opportunities there. I'm picking up Shell now, and then I'm picking up I'm trying to pick up Schlumberger, which is another oil producer company, and also I'm trying to get into Wells Fargo Bank, which is just getting decimated. I mean, it's just getting destroyed. And I'm looking at some opportunities there. I might even have to go into Exxon at some point. Some of the bigger players. I don't want to mess around with smaller players too much. Maybe just as a hobby, but okay. So let's go to a month. This is what it looks like. And then the 6 month is the one that's very relevant because you can really see the bifurcation that I talked about in other videos, right? So you can't see the finance sector here. Maybe you can. Now you can. But it's very, very, very red since 6 months ago, before the virus situation started. And you can see how all the techs and semiconductors and online retailers, they really exploded to the upside. Home improvement, etc. Very successful. Alright, so here's what I want to talk about. Look at the world map, first of all. Some very interesting things that I stumbled upon. So it's hard to see here, but this is China here, and the UK, some fun facts, have roughly the same. You can't see all of China, but well, maybe I'll zoom out for the sake of this video, huh? How about that? Let's see, web. We'll unlock it. Okay, for the sake of this video, I'll readjust it again later. This is on the fly, guys. Doing extra work because I'm gonna have to revert back to normal later. All right. Now you can clearly see everything. Pretty much. You can see that China is about the size of the UK. I mean, that's a fun fact. China has like, I don't know how many, 1.67, how many billion people, and UK doesn't. I'd be surprised if it has 100,000. Maybe they have 150 or something. I don't know what, probably under 100,000. Someone knows, let me know. And they have, their companies have about the same market valuation, which is kind of surprising. You'd think like with such big names like Alibaba and, you know, Baidu and PetroChina, JD.com, which has been doing fantastic, by the way, and all these big companies, Tencent, you can't even see Tencent on here, right? Look, there it is. But you would think in their combined market capitalization would be higher than the United Kingdom's, but it's actually not. I mean, it's about the same size. Very surprising. So opportunity there, just from a capitalization perspective. Japan is like 1/3 the size of China when it comes to companies size. Look how small India is. India is smaller than Toyota. All right. So if you combine all of the companies' market capitalization, right, from India, they're as big as one Japanese company in market capitalization. That's ridiculous, right? So it just spells opportunity. I mean, but it comes back down to the heart of what I was trying to say earlier, which is very hard to do business in some of these countries. The rules are just not there. The regulations, the trust, right, is just not there. And the culture, most importantly, out of all these things, the culture of entrepreneurship, business, and capitalism is just not there in some of these countries. So it's you have to consider that when you're investing. But I mean, just from a valuation perspective, I would be a buyer of India right here, right? They are the second most populous country and are smaller than Toyota Motors. It's crazy. Singapore looks like it only has one company, but it's a very tiny island and it has a lot going for it for being so tiny. South Korea is actually smaller in market capitalization than Singapore, so I'd be a buyer of South Korea. In fact, I actually sold some puts against South Korea, trying to get into that play from a valuation perspective, and as well as Indonesia, which is one of the most populous countries, I think number 5 in the world. It's something like that, maybe 4, and it only tracks one company here, but I mean, and most of these companies are pretty global anyways from some of these places, so it's kind of hard to get money in there and invest in some of these places. But I'd definitely be a buyer of South Korea. It's very technologically advanced, and it's doing great things, as well as handling diseases very well. Sweden, I'm also bull in Sweden. Spotify. I can't believe that Spotify is half of their market cap at the moment. Pretty cool. But some of the surprise I want to save is this one right here, Bermuda. All right. By the way, if you want to look at some of these, you can take a look at this chart. But I want to talk about Bermuda. Look at this. Bermuda is literally like twice the size of Mexico in market cap, and it has only 70,000 people living in the country or so. It's insane, right? Look, almost twice the size of Mexico, and Mexico hasn't been doing that well in the last 6 months. But it got me curious, like, why is this happening? Why is Bermuda so well positioned here? These companies are so valued, and there isn't like a 1-2 company monopoly, or not monopoly, but dominance, like let's say in Sweden Or South Africa, it's all like gold miners, right? Or like Australia, there's just 3 big companies there listed, and that's it. Okay, so usually some of the small places you find that, right? You can see Argentina, there's just one dominant company, or like Italy, there's two, right? Ferrari, everybody knows that. Or Peru. So I'm thinking, why is this? Why does it have such a diverse market? And then, boom, I come to read this, all right? Which is, there's no income tax, no profits tax, no withholding tax, no capital gains tax, no capital transfer tax, no estate duty or inheritance tax. They don't even have a value added tax. They don't have a VAT. Can you believe that? The only way they pay for their bills there is they put a duty on some imports, and that's it. Isn't that crazy? They have absolutely zero taxes there. So no wonder that it's heaven, not a haven, but a heaven for some of these corporate entities, right? So as you can imagine, most of the businesses there would have to be, very globally reaching without having to basically have arms in all other parts of the world where they operate. So they're mostly banking, investment entities, and insurance entities, things like that, where they could just deal with capital flows. But I just want to emphasize the size on this thing, right? So market capitalization of Bermuda, okay, that has 70,000 people. Look at India, right? It's like 3 times bigger than the market capitalization of all Indian publicly traded companies on the market there. That's fairly insane. Fairly insane. So that speaks, I mean, you can interpret this in many ways. You could say, oh, well, Bermuda's got it right, so that, Bermuda's going to be doing well in the future relative to India. But you can also say that India has, a billion and 1.1, 1.2, I don't know how many billions of people they have, but if some of those people decide to do something, okay, they could easily overshadow Bermuda. So it just speaks to opportunity, really. So bottom line, I would be buying Bermuda. I'm not Bermuda, sorry, India. I'd be bull on South Korea. And just in general, the emerging markets, right? You can see how I asked you, remember how I asked you to take note of how big Alibaba was, and it was about half of the size of Amazon? Well, if Amazon was overlapped on this chart here, it would take 2/3 of the Chinese market capitalization. That's how big the company is. Okay. Another fun fact is the GDP of South Korea, right? The entire gross domestic product, not the market capitalization of the companies, but then the entire gross domestic product of South Korea equals the market capitalization of Apple, which is absolutely insane, right? So I'm a big buyer of something like South Korea, for example. So I'm trying to get into it. But in general, this is one reason why I have automatic reinvestment in something like DEM. Where was it? Over here, you can see how I have 101 point whatever. Where is it? 1.277, etc. And that's because I don't plan on getting out of this anytime soon. Right, I wanted to keep paying dividends. DEM, by the way, is Emerging Market High Dividend Fund. You can see its performance has been pretty lackluster in the past year. Definitely not beating the tech sector or anything like this, but it's moving more or less in line with the general, international market S&P. But I definitely think that there's going to be a point where the emerging market will start outperforming the U.S. just because of scale, right? I mean, let's go back to the world map. You can see, if you take the S&P 500, I mean, it's bigger than the rest of the world when it comes to market capitalization, just in the U.S. Okay, it would overlap all these companies and then some. So I think there's just a big opportunity in emerging markets, especially with some of the fundamentals shifting, kind of like this weakening dollar that we're experiencing right now, etc. And that's really all I wanted to share. Now I'm gonna spend 2-3 minutes trying to put the the camera back together, the viewer browser, whatever it's called. All right. Well, hopefully you all are making more money than I am. I know it's hard, because this account went up 4% today, but I'm sure some of you did. With that said, I'm gonna probably make another video on Monday night. Peace out.